When art became a part of Miles Morales' character development, that's when he started to stand out as a character. Art is a great way to show a character's growth. When Miles Morales debuted, he was really just like an innocent kid. Remember, Donald Glover for Spider-Man is what started the whole Black Spider-Man thing. And out of that, thanks to Brian Michael Bendis and Sarah Bocelli, we got Miles Morales, this Afro-Latino kid who's going to become the next Spider-Man. When he debuted, Miles was mad young, sweet-faced, and just this little innocent kid. A kid that was trying to be a hero, to fill the place left by Peter Parker, who died. And that was a dope story, but we never really got much of Miles Morales as a character outside of that. It felt like a bunch of things were happening to Miles and he was reacting to them, but the personality was still very raw. And to me, that changed when we got into the Spider-Verse. The thing that made Miles Morales stand out in Into the Spider-Verse was the art. He's a young kid that's into graffiti, so we got to see a lot of Miles Morales' personality through the doodles he was doing in his sketchbook, as well as the music he was listening to, and even the way he interacted with his friends just walking down the street. We never really heard him speak Spanish before in the comic books, even though there was a comic book that was all Spanish, I believe. But I believe this was the first time we were seeing him just speak it fluently among friends and whatnot. All these details gave more insight to Miles Morales as a character, but especially the art. It was very telling that his father's a cop, but he's into graffiti and doing tags and murals, and he's getting help from his uncle with this. So we see the side that represents authority in his life with his father, and the side that represents rebelliousness in his life with his uncle. And that his uncle was going down and helping him tag the murals and showing him how to tag correctly, as well as bringing his art to life, was incredibly telling. And we see how that stuck with Miles Morales when he got his new spider suit and adjusted it with graffiti. When Miles remixed that fit with graffiti, it separated him from his comic book counterpart. This was a Miles that was entirely different from what we've seen before. And we see that with his art and the fact that he's still tagging in New York City, just in higher places that he can reach as Spider-Man. That art that he was doing was reflective of a culture that he came from and his environment as well. That's what I really love about him being an artist, especially a graffiti artist. Back over in the comic book, when Miles joins Marvel 616 proper, we see the creative team of Saladin Ahmed and Javier Garran give Miles a different type of artistry, where he's not an artist, but a writer instead. Saladin Ahmed had Miles taking a creative writing class. As a writer, I fucking love this. You don't see that often. I think because making someone an artist is easier to translate because it's such a visual thing. Whereas with writing, it's not as visual. You gotta stick with it for a while to see what's going on. Saladin had Miles journaling. And it's here in this series that we see more of Miles Morales' personality come out. It's reflective in the things in his room. He's got a Dazzler poster. He's laughing about cat videos with his friends. And while he's still going on in adventures, every time we see him in a civilian downtime, we see a little bit more about him just based on the surrounding he's in. The biggest representation of that happens in Miles Morales Spider-Man issue number 4 by Saladin Ahmed and Javier Garran. It's a slice of life issue where we see Miles Morales and his friends skipping school in order to go to the Brooklyn Museum to see this hip-hop exhibit. I love this because we see Miles showing interest in music here, and we see the taste in music he has. He's really excited to see the Biggie exhibit, and also in that exhibit we see Jay-Z, we see Mos Def, one of my personal faves. Even though it's a slice of life issue, we're getting more of Miles Morales' personality, the things he enjoys, as well as how he is with his friends. He's got his friends laughing during a horror movie, talking about not going down into the basement. It's these interactions and these slice of life moments that build Miles Morales up as a character. When he debuted, he was basically like a sweet kid. There wasn't really much to him though. But the beautiful thing about all these different creative teams is, as Miles Morales grew up before our eyes, we've seen the person that he's become now and the personality that he has. Art always makes people more interesting. Over in NYX, David Lane is going through a similar thing. You might remember David as Prodigy from the new X-Men. Now your boy's out here throwing murals up all over the city, and this is really dope because if you remember David Lane's power, anything you know, any skill you know, he automatically knows it, which always makes him the most dangerous person in the room and the smartest person in the room, which is a dope power, but also it kind of works against him sometimes because yeah, you know the answer, but then he has to work backwards to figure out how he got that answer. But he also doesn't have that mental block in place anymore, so whoever he meets, he knows what they knows. He knows the skills they do, and he retains that shit, making this dude entirely dangerous. And we've seen him do a bunch of odd jobs with his abilities as well, where he was working at like a call center over in Next Wave, I believe, and doing some security work over in Ant-Man. But now over in NYX, he's really making a name for himself with all these different murals he's throwing up. All these different murals are David's way of preserving the Krakoan culture. And I love this for him because we don't know if this is a skill he took from someone or one he developed himself. Either way, it's dope because we see him doing his own artistic expression with this skill. This is cool to me because during the day, he's teaching at ESU, teaching about Krakoan culture, their land, everything, their religion, all the things they were doing and developing on that island of Krakoa. And there's all this anti-mutant sentiment going on, which I mean, really, when isn't there? They always return back to the status quo. But while he's trying to do his part, people are kind of judging him for it. Sophie Cuckoo was talking to him crazy. We see Wolverine and a new mutant named Local that were stealing something from ESU, and they ran into David. Laura and David were on the same team when they were younger, and she was telling David, yo, you're not in this world anymore. Just stay out of of it, ignore what you saw. You never saw me. But all the while, David was still in this world because he's throwing up these murals at night. And again, I talked about this before, but if you look through all these different issues of NYX, you see all these different murals in the background. I love this because this is David using his ability and his art for protest, for rebellion. There's something so cold about that shit to me, especially seeing in his day-to-day life how the fact that he's a mutant comes up in everyday conversation with his students, with his lover, with his job, all these little microaggressions against him. And this is how he fights back against all that. At the end of the first arc, we even get a dope shot of a bunch of the murals he's done throughout the entire city. I will always be a fan of niche characters getting more props and more recognition and shine. And this doesn't just work with obscure characters. Steve Rogers is an artist. A lot of people forget that. I love when we get to see him doodling in comic books, and in the MCU, they had him doodling in his notebook as well. And Avenging Spider-Man #5, when Steve Rogers' old artwork gets put into paper and it's up for sale, he's kind of about it, and Peter Parker gets it for him as a gift. Peter even hangs it up in his room, and Steve Rogers is like, nah, take that shit down. It's a reminder of when he was a kid and sickly, and this is the only way he could contribute to the war before the super soldier serum. Spider-Man's telling him like, yo, you're kind of being a little too hard on yourself. And he's like, hey, you still play with your first chemistry set? Peter's like, nah, man, I don't be playing nah, cool, like, I hear you. And then he goes and takes it down. But before he leaves, he's like, I do still play my chemistry set. I don't know why I lied about it to you. And when Peter Parker's cleaning up his room and about to throw out his first chemistry set, which he still plays with, he runs into Steve Rogers in the kitchen, and Rogers is like, yeah, I was thinking about what you were telling me, and I decided to get back into doodling, and I could use your help. And here we see this nice moment where Steve is no longer just thinking he's a soldier and giving up these little kid things. Like, nah, he's still with his art, and Peter is helping him. Never forget, this is a man out of time, so he was trying to do things he saw online with the art, and Peter's like, wow, you were kind of going crazy here. Okay, I like what you got here. Maybe we try incorporating this, incorporating that. This is a small story and a little bit of a slice of life thing as well going on, because it focuses on Steve Rogers not really fucking with his old artwork, which is never really the case, but I like this bit of a spin on it, because this little spin, as Peter Parker puts it, makes Steve Rogers a nerd. And this is something that Peter Parker and Steve Rogers can bond over, which is what Peter was trying to do for the entire issue and finally pays off. So that's one of my favorite things, and I love that it isn't really a trope, more so a tool to use art in order to grow a character or show us different personality traits of that character within their art.